First contact and deception. Dr. Sarah Chen never expected to find proof of alien life in brain scans. As she stared at the holographic display floating above her desk at the Neuroscience Institute, the anomalous patterns pulsed with an undeniable regularity that couldn't be explained by any known neurological process. "Run the comparison again," she ordered the lab's eye, even though she'd already done it 12 times. The results remained consistent. Thousands of human subjects showed the same mysterious neural signature, a pattern that appeared to be receiving information from an external source. The implications were staggering. Someone, or something, was monitoring human brain activity on a massive scale. Sarah's discovery might have remained buried in academic papers if not for Captain Maya Rodriguez of the UN Space Force. The captain had been investigating a series of inexplicable equipment failures at human colonies across the solar system when she noticed they coincided with spikes in psychological distress among the colonists. "Your neural patterns match the energy signatures we detected before each incident," Maya explained during their first meeting at the Institute. Her dark eyes held a soldier's intensity as she spread out classified reports across Sarah's desk. "We think whatever's causing these signatures is studying our responses to crisis situations." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. "You're suggesting we're part of some kind of experiment." "Exactly. And I need your help to prove it." Over the next 3 months, Sarah and Maya worked to track the source of the neural signatures. They assembled a team of Earth's brightest minds: quantum physicists, xenobiologists, and information theorists, all working under the strictest secrecy. What they discovered changed everything they thought they knew about humanity's place in the universe. The signals weren't just observations. They were targeted stimulations designed to provoke specific emotional responses. Someone was farming human emotions like a crop. Their breakthrough came during a routine scan of the Kuiper Belt, a massive structure, previously hidden by advanced stealth technology, briefly revealed itself when Sarah's team broadcast a counter-frequency to the neural signatures. The structure was a research station larger than Earth's moon, staffed by beings that called themselves the archivists. First contact was nothing like humanity had imagined. The archivists were tall, crystalline beings that communicated through pulses of light and energy. They expressed surprise at being discovered, but showed no remorse for their covert study of humanity. "Your species produces emotional energy of unprecedented purity," their leader explained through a hastily constructed translation matrix. "We have been collecting and storing this energy for centuries. It is too valuable a resource to ignore." Resource. Maya's hand instinctively moved to her sidearm. "You've been manipulating us, causing disasters just to harvest our emotional responses." The archivist's crystalline form pulsed with what their xenolinguists interpreted as amusement. "Your emotions are not a biological accident. They are a highly efficient form of energy generation that more advanced species have evolved beyond. We simply make use of what you would otherwise waste." Sarah stepped forward, her scientific curiosity warring with growing anger. "How many other species do you harvest like this?" "None." The answer came with another pulse of light. "Your kind is unique in still maintaining such primitive psychological functions. Most sentient species evolve toward pure logic and energy-based consciousness. You are an aberration, but a useful one." That's when Sarah noticed something odd in her neural scan readings. The archivists weren't just collecting emotional energy. They were storing massive amounts of it. Far more than could be explained by simple research or energy collection. "You're stockpiling it," she realized aloud. "Building up reserves. Why?" The archivist's crystalline form darkened. "That information is not relevant to your function." But Sarah had already connected the dots. The targeted provocations of human colonies, the careful documentation of crisis responses, the massive storage facilities. "You're weaponizing our emotions," she said, preparing for some kind of war. The translation matrix crackled as the archivist's response came through. "Your purpose is to provide emotional energy. Nothing more. Attempts to understand beyond your function will be met with corrective measures." Maya moved with military precision, placing herself between Sarah and the alien. "We are not your batteries," she said firmly, "and we are not your weapons. Humanity makes its own choices." "An incorrect assessment," the archivist replied. "You have never made your own choices. Every major conflict, every crisis, every triumph, we have orchestrated them all to maximize emotional energy production. You are what we made you to be." As alarms began blaring throughout the station, Sarah grabbed Maya's arm. "We need to warn Earth," she whispered. "They're not just studying us. They're farming us. And whatever they're preparing for, I don't think we're meant to survive it." Maya nodded grimly. "Send everything you've recorded. I'll hold them off." As Sarah rushed to transmit their discoveries back to Earth, she realized humanity had never been alone in the universe. But the truth was far worse than isolation. They had been cattle, carefully bred and managed by farmers they couldn't even see. Now the question was, what would humanity do with that knowledge? The archivists were about to learn that their carefully cultivated crop had grown teeth. The emotional edge. 3 weeks after the encounter at the archivist station, Earth's military facilities hummed with unprecedented activity. Deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, in a facility hastily converted from an old missile silo, Dr. Sarah Chen stood before a wall of holographic displays, showing emotional energy readings from volunteer test subjects. The archivists were right about one thing, she told the assembled military leaders. Human emotions do generate measurable energy signatures, but they were wrong about why we still have them. Admiral James Patel, the newly appointed head of Earth's Defense Initiative, leaned forward. "Explain." Sarah gestured to a particularly vibrant display, showing a complex web of mural patterns. "These scans are from Captain Rodriguez during combat simulations. The emotional energy she generates isn't just raw power. It's structured, adaptable, almost intelligent in its own right." Maya Rodriguez, who had barely escaped the archivist station with Sarah, stepped up to the display. The captain's face bore new scars from their encounter, but her eyes burned with determination. "Show them what happens when we focus it." Sarah nodded and activated the testing chamber behind them. Inside, a piece of archivist technology salvaged from one of their hidden monitoring stations sat inert, its crystalline surface dark. Maya closed her eyes, concentrating, and the monitors showed her emotional energy output spiking. The crystal began to crack. The archivists evolved away from emotions because they thought pure logic was the path to advancement, Sarah explained as the crystal continued to fracture. But they didn't realize that emotions aren't just feelings. They're a form of consciousness all their own, one that can interact with and even override their technology. Admiral Patel watched as the crystal finally shattered. How is this possible? Because their entire civilization is built on the same principles as their bodies, crystalline structures that channel and process energy. Sarah brought up a new display showing the molecular structure of archivist technology. They're perfectly ordered, perfectly logical. But human emotional energy is chaos given form. It disrupts their patterns, introduces randomness they can't compensate for. Like throwing sand in a machine, Maya added. Our emotions don't just generate energy. They generate energy that's fundamentally incompatible with their systems. The implications weren't lost on anyone in the room. Humanity had a weapon, but more than that, they had proof that human nature itself wasn't a weakness to be evolved past. It was a power the archivists had abandoned in their quest for perfection. "We've identified 3 primary types of emotional energy," Sarah continued. Fight responses generate destructive power that can overload their systems. Flight responses create interference patterns that disrupt their communications. And most importantly, positive emotions like hope and determination actually strengthen our resistance to their control signals. That's why they had to keep us ignorant, Maya realized. The moment we started actively focusing our emotions, we became more dangerous than they ever imagined. Sarah finished. But we have to act fast. The archivists have centuries of stored human emotional energy. Once they realize we've discovered how to use it ourselves, they'll either try to harvest everything they can before we can stop them, or they'll decide to eliminate the threat we pose entirely, Admiral Patel concluded. How long until we can weaponize this discovery? Sarah shared a look with Maya. That's the thing, sir. We already have. Every human being is already a weapon. We just need to teach them how to use what they've always had. The next month saw the fastest mobilization in human history. Sarah and her team worked around the clock, developing techniques to help people consciously direct their emotional energy. Maya led the military training programs, teaching soldiers to channel their feelings into focused weapons. But it wasn't just the military that trained. Every human colony, every settlement, every city became a training ground. The archivists had spent centuries treating humanity like batteries. Now each human learned to become a generator. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. During a routine training session, a group of children showed an ability to not just generate emotional energy, but to share and combine it. Their pure, unfiltered emotions proved especially potent against archivist technology. They never understood what emotions really are, Sarah told Maya as they watched the children practicing. They saw them as a primitive evolutionary holdover, but they're actually the next step in consciousness. We didn't fail to evolve past emotions. We evolved to use them in ways they can't comprehend. Maya nodded, absently touching the scars on her face. How much time do you think we have before they realize what's happening? As if in answer, every monitor in the facility suddenly flashed red. Alert signals poured in from colonies across the solar system. The archivists were on the move, their massive harvesting ships dropping out of stealth, no longer bothering to hide their presence. They know, Sarah said grimly, and they're not going to wait for us to get stronger. Maya was already moving, marking orders into her comm unit. All units to battle stations. This is not a drill. Operation Emotional Override is now in effect. As alarm sirens blared and humanity prepared for its first true interstellar war, Sarah looked at the emotional energy readings still flowing across her screens. The archivists thought they had created the perfect system for farming human emotions. Instead, they had given humanity the time and motivation to master their greatest strength. Now it was time to show them exactly what primitive humans could do. Underground resistance. The mining colony on Eurova never stood a chance. The archivists' harvest ships descended without warning, their crystalline hulls glowing with stolen emotional energy as they prepared to drain the settlement dry. But the colonists weren't the helpless cattle they'd been just months ago. Deep beneath the ice, in tunnels meant for mineral extraction, Dr. Marcus Wong watched the battle through neural feeds. The former psychologist had been teaching emotional focusing techniques when the attack began. Now he observed as his students put their training to use. Remember, he broadcast to the linked minds of the resistance fighters. Fear is as powerful as courage. They can both be weapons if you know how to use them. Above, the archivist harvesters deployed their usual tactics, broadcasting waves of artificially induced panic designed to generate harvestable energy. But this time, something was different. The humans weren't just feeling their fear, they were directing it. Sarah Chen's voice crackled over the emergency comm. "Status report, Marcus." "It's working," he replied, watching the energy readings. "The harvester beams are being reflected back at them. Their own technology is being overwhelmed by the emotional feedback." The archivists had never considered that their victims might learn to weaponize their harvesting technology. They'd designed their systems to collect and store human emotional energy, not to handle it being consciously directed back at them. The first harvester fell when a group of teenage colonists, trained in emotional amplification, combined their fear and anger into a focused blast. The crystalline ship's perfect structure couldn't handle the chaotic energy. It shattered like glass, raining glowing shards onto Europa's icy surface. But the victory came at a cost. Marcus watched in horror as the emotional backlash knocked several of the teens unconscious. "We need more control. The feedback is too strong." That's when Lisa Chen, Sarah's 16-year-old daughter, stepped forward. Unlike the others who fought their fear, she embraced it, shaped it, turned it into something new. The monitor showed her emotional signature transforming from chaotic terror into structured determination. "Everyone link with me," she broadcast to the other fighters. "I'll show you how." Marcus watched in amazement as Lisa's emotional patterns spread through the neural network, teaching others by example how to transmute their raw feelings into focused power. A second harvester fell, then a third, and this time the humans wielding the emotional energy remained standing. "They're retreating," someone called out. The remaining harvesters were pulling back, their crystalline forms flickering with what looked like uncertainty, an emotion the archivists had supposedly evolved beyond. Sarah's voice returned, tight with concern. "Marcus, get everyone underground. We're detecting quantum fluctuations. They're bringing in something big." The warning came just in time. A massive vessel emerged from subspace, its crystalline surface so perfect it was almost invisible against space. This was no harvester, it was a purifier, designed to eliminate civilizations the archivists deemed too dangerous to exist. "All units, fall back to the deep shelters," Marcus ordered. "Lisa, you and your team. We're not running." Lisa's voice was calm, certain. The monitors showed her emotional output changing again, fear and determination mixing with something the sensors couldn't quite identify. Hope, maybe, or evolution. Before Marcus could stop them, Lisa and a core group of the young resistance fighters linked their minds completely, not just sharing emotions, but merging them into something entirely new. Their individual energy signatures combined into a pattern that even the most advanced archivist systems couldn't predict or counter. The purifier fired its main weapon, a beam designed to sever the connection between consciousness and emotion, leaving victims in a permanent vegetative state. But when it struck the linked humans' combined emotional shield, something impossible happened. The beam reflected. Marcus watched in awe as the purifier's own weapon struck its perfect crystalline hull, corrupted by the chaos of human emotional energy. Cracks spread across its surface like lightning through glass. The massive ship tried to retreat, but it was too late. As the purifier shattered, its quantum core destabilizing in a spectacular display of light and energy, Marcus finally understood what Sarah had theorized months ago. Emotions weren't just energy to be harvested or weapons to be wielded. They were the next step in consciousness, a way of processing reality that the archivists had abandoned in their quest for logical perfection. The teenagers had just proven that humanity's greatest weakness was actually its greatest strength. Not because emotions generated power, but because they could evolve, adapt, and combine in ways pure logic never could. "Dr. Chen," Marcus transmitted as he watched Lisa and her team recovering from their mental link. "I think your daughter just invented a new form of consciousness." Sarah's reply was interrupted by priority alerts from across the solar system. The archivists were pulling back everywhere, retreating to regroup and reassess. But they weren't giving up. They were adapting, learning. Maybe, Marcus thought as he watched Lisa teaching others how to form the new kind of mental link, the archivists weren't the only ones evolving. Humanity had spent centuries being harvested as an emotional resource. Now they were becoming something their harvesters had never imagined possible. The real question was, what would they become next? The counterattack. Admiral James Patel stood in Earth's new Combined Operations Center, watching holographic displays track humanity's first major offensive against the archivists. The crystalline beings had retreated to their core systems after the Europa incident, but intelligence suggested they were developing countermeasures against humanity's emotional weapons. "We can't give them time to adapt." Maya Rodriguez, now promoted to colonel, argued during the final strategy briefing. "We need to strike while our advantages still surprise them." Sarah Chen, monitoring the emotional energy signatures of their attack fleet, nodded in agreement. "The archivists think in linear patterns. They'll expect us to be defensive, to protect our colonies. They won't anticipate us bringing the fight to them." The human fleet dropped out of FTL on the edge of Archivist space, their ships modified with emotional amplification systems. Each vessel carried teams of trained emotional focusers, including groups of teenagers like Lisa Chen who had shown exceptional ability to link and direct emotional energy. The first Archivist patrol they encountered tried to flee rather than fight, something that would have been unthinkable months ago. Pure logic dictated standing and fighting superior numbers. But the Archivists were learning something they had supposedly evolved beyond: fear. They're adapting faster than expected, Sarah reported, studying the energy readings. Their crystalline structures are becoming less rigid, trying to absorb emotional feedback rather than shatter from it. Then we adapt faster, Maya replied. She turned to Lisa and her team, who operated from a specially shielded chamber. Show them what that new linking technique can do. The teenagers joined minds, but this time they didn't just combine their emotions. They began reaching out, sensing the very structure of space around them. The Archivists had built their entire civilization on crystalline patterns, from their bodies to their ships to the quantum communications networks that connected their worlds. And patterns could be disrupted. The human fleet surged forward, teenage emotional adepts leading the charge. Where individual emotional attacks had once shattered single ships, the linked consciousness of the human fighters now sent ripples through space itself, disrupting the perfect crystalline order the Archivists depended on. Multiple Archivist ships experiencing critical failures, Tactical reported. Their quantum communication network is destabilizing. They can't coordinate their defenses. But the Archivists weren't defeated yet. A massive energy surge registered on the sensors as they deployed their new countermeasure: vast crystalline structures designed to channel and redirect emotional energy harmlessly into space. They're trying to ground out our attacks, Sarah realized, like lightning rods for emotions. That's when Lisa's voice came through the comm, strained but determined. They still don't understand. Emotions aren't just energy. They're alive. They evolve. The linked teenagers proved her point, their combined consciousness reaching out to the Archivist energy dissipators. Instead of fighting the crystalline structures, they synchronized with them, using them as amplifiers for their own power. The Archivists' perfect defensive pattern became a weapon against them. Multiple Archivist worlds going dark, Tactical reported. Their entire power grid is collapsing. Quantum communications are offline. Admiral Patel watched as the Archivist defense fleet began to break apart, their perfectly coordinated movements degrading into chaos as each ship lost contact with the others. Without their quantum network, without their unified consciousness, they were experiencing something entirely new: isolation. Send the surrender demand, he ordered. Let's see if they're ready to talk. The response came not in words, but in a massive energy surge from the Archivist homeworld. Their capital city, a vast crystalline structure that had stood for millennia, was transforming. The perfect geometric patterns began to shift and flow, taking on organic curves that no Archivist had ever conceived of before. They're evolving, Sarah whispered, watching the readings. The emotional energy exposure isn't just disrupting them. It's changing them, teaching them how to feel again. All ships hold position, Admiral Patel commanded. The human fleet paused their advance, watching as the Archivist homeworld continued its unprecedented transformation. A transmission cut through all frequencies, its crystalline harmony now underlaid with something new: emotional resonance. We request dialogue. The Archivist leader's voice held unfamiliar harmonics. We are experiencing sensations we do not understand. We require help. Maya turned to Sarah. Is this a trick? Sarah shook her head, studying the energy patterns. No, this is something else. Remember how Lisa and her team created a new form of consciousness by linking emotions? I think we just triggered an equivalent evolution in the Archivists. They're rediscovering what they lost when they chose pure logic over feeling. Admiral Patel considered the implications. The goal had been to stop the Archivists from harvesting humanity's emotions. Instead, they had shown their former oppressors a new path, one that combined the best of both species' capabilities. "Stand down to defensive positions," he ordered, "but keep the emotional shields at full power. Colonel Rodriguez, Dr. Chen, prepare a first contact team. A real one this time." As the human fleet held position, watching the continuing transformation of the Archivist homeworld, Sarah turned to her daughter. "How did you know this would happen?" Lisa smiled, still linked with her team. "We didn't, but that's the thing about emotions. They're unpredictable. They evolve. They create new possibilities. The Archivists thought they were collecting energy, but what they were really harvesting were seeds of change. And now those seeds are finally growing. The war wasn't over. There would be hard negotiations ahead, trust to rebuild, and new boundaries to establish. But humanity had proven something incredible. Sometimes the best way to win a war isn't to destroy your enemy, but to help them remember what they've lost." The question now was, what would both species become together? Evolution's answer. 1 year after the transformation of the Archivist homeworld, Sarah Chen stood in a chamber that would have been impossible just months ago. The walls were crystalline, but not in the rigid patterns the Archivists once favored. These structures flowed like frozen waves, responding to the emotions of those within. The chamber was the first joint human archivist research facility, built to study what they now called evolutionary consciousness. Representatives of both species worked together, exploring the unprecedented changes that had reshaped their understanding of consciousness itself. "The patterns are stabilizing," announced first speaker Lumina, an archivist whose crystalline form now shifted with subtle colors reflecting their emotional state. "The merger of logical structure and emotional fluidity is sustainable." Sarah watched as her daughter Lisa worked with a group of young archivists, teaching them to channel and shape their newly awakened emotions. The crystalline beings no longer shattered when exposed to human feelings. They had learned to bend, to adapt, to grow. "We were both incomplete," Lisa explained to her students, her consciousness lightly linked with theirs in the new hybrid form of communication they had developed. "Humans had emotional power but lacked the structure to fully control it. Archivists had perfect structure but lacked the dynamic energy to evolve it." Colonel Maya Rodriguez, serving as security director for the facility, entered with Admiral Patel. "The last of the hardcore logic purist factions has surrendered," she reported. "They tried to set up a quarantine zone to protect themselves from emotional contamination. But they couldn't stand the isolation." Sarah finished. "The archivists evolved beyond emotions because they thought unity of mind required pure logic. They never realized that emotions themselves could create an even deeper connection." Admiral Patel nodded, watching a demonstration where human and archivist children play together, their combined emotional logical energies creating beautiful patterns in the crystalline walls. "Hard to believe a year ago. We were preparing for total war. Now look at us, building something entirely new." The facility's sensors suddenly registered a massive spike in energy. Everyone turned to watch as one of the young archivists, encouraged by their human friends, experienced joy for the first time. Their crystalline form blazed with colors no one had seen before, and the walls of the chamber resonated in harmony. "That's the real breakthrough," Lisa said, smiling at her students' achievement. "Not just feeling emotions, but discovering new ones. Things neither humans nor archivists had experienced before." Sarah's research team had documented dozens of these new emotional logical states, consciousness patterns that could only exist through the interaction of human and archivist minds. They weren't just combining existing traits, they were evolving into something greater than either species had imagined possible. "We're recording another contact request," Maya reported, checking her displays. 3 more civilizations have detected the changes in archivist space. They want to know what's happening." Sarah shared a look with Lumina. They had expected this. The transformation of human and archivist society was sending ripples through the galaxy. Other species that had followed the archivist's path of pure logic were seeing another way forward. Tell them the truth, Lumina said, their form shifting with a complex mix of pride and anticipation. Evolution didn't mean abandoning emotions for logic. It meant learning to unite them. As if to emphasize the point, the chamber filled with a new kind of energy as Lisa's class made another breakthrough. The human and archivist children had discovered how to merge their consciousness in a way that preserved both individual identity and group unity, something both species had once thought impossible. The archivists thought they were harvesting our emotions, Sarah said, watching the display. Instead, they were collecting the seeds of their own revolution. Every feeling they stored, every human response they studied, was showing them what they had lost and what they could become. Maya smiled, touching the scars on her face. Proud marks now, not painful memories. And humans learn that emotions aren't just feelings to be controlled or weapons to be used. They're tools for evolution itself. The chamber's crystalline walls pulsed with the combined consciousness of everyone present, human and archivist, young and old, each contributing their unique perspective to the greater whole. Not through forced unity or pure logic, but through the willing sharing of both thought and feeling. So what comes next? Admiral Patel asked, watching the children experiment with their growing abilities. Sarah looked at her daughter, who had grown from a teenager discovering her powers into a teacher helping two species find a new path forward. Evolution doesn't have an endpoint, she said. It's a journey that never ends. The real question is, who do we want to become? Lisa answered by linking with her archivist students, their combined consciousness creating patterns of impossible beauty in the chamber walls. Each design was unique, unpredictable, alive with both logical structure and emotional flow. They had all been wrong, humans and archivists alike. Evolution wasn't about becoming purely logical or purely emotional. It wasn't about harvesting power or achieving perfect unity. Evolution was about growth, about change, about finding new ways to experience and understand existence itself. And now, together, they were free to explore all the possibilities that lay ahead. The chamber filled with light as human and archivist consciousness merged and flowed, creating something the galaxy had never seen before, a future where logic and emotion danced together in endless, beautiful patterns. The harvest had ended. The growth had begun.